is what flows in this fam's DNA. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA.
What's good, everybody, and welcome to Dope Interviews. It's brought to you by the mighty 19 Media Group. I'm your host, Warren Shaw, and in the virtual building today, I have somebody who I'm considering to get to be one of my friends. He's definitely an amazing colleague out here in this space. He is an entrepreneur. He's a marketer, real estate investor, change maker, and he's also the founder and CEO of Pod Digital Media. Gary Coichy. Gary, thank you so much for joining us here in Dope Interviews, brother. Very nice to have this conversation, man.
Warren, my man, excited to be here. Appreciate you. Thank you for having me. And to correct you, we're certainly colleagues. I feel like we've been doing work now for the last 2 years, would you say?
Yeah.
We kicked off the relationship. So it's certainly beyond just like, strangers at this point. So
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Too kind, my brother. Too kind. Well, I've done some research and, we like to start here in the beginning, kind of in Dope Interviews, but might be starting from a space you might not be expecting, so to speak, but you spent some time overseas, right? You spent some time like in London doing some international studies. Talk to me a little bit about that, how that influenced your approach to marketing and business.
No, absolutely, man. So first of all, I'm Haitian. I'm born and raised. I was born in the island of Haiti. So I moved to the States at the age of 15, going on 16. And I learned English between 17 and 18, right? So there's a program called ESL, English as a Second Language. When you arrive from a different country, you get into that program, and that's basically how you start sort of really get accustomed to the language and you start learning the language, etc. So that being said, so being a third world country kid, moved to the States, trying to adapt, in your teen years, peak teen years at that. And then once I went to college, studying international business and marketing, there was an opportunity within the school that I attended where you can actually, in fact, go to school overseas and sort of really just learn businesses different, sort of how different cultures conduct business and learn about different international trades, rules, etc. The first country that I've ever visited post the United States after Haiti was Great Britain, and I went to school in London. So in London, I preface the conversation by saying I'm from Haiti because now in London, it's an entirely different culture, right? Yeah. It's, you have folks from Sweden, India, you have folks from, Italy, Spain. So it's similar to New York. It's certainly a melting pot, and a lot of folks with different views. So earlier on, man, that certainly shaped my views. Where now I till this day, now I'm in my early 40s, where I always think of a global perspective, simply because that's how I was shaped at a young age. From at 19, interacting with folks from from different cultures in Europe, Africa, India, Asia, etc. At that early age, in a whole different continent, right? So that certainly shaped my views and perspective, especially from a business perspective, where I always look beyond, my current sort of geographic locations, and always thinking, how does this impact everyone at the global level?
Gary, is one thing that I want to kind of turn this conversation to, and not necessarily just from the podcasting lens, but as I consume a lot of television and entertainment, the English are coming. They're not coming. They're here. Like they're
Right.
here, and kind of in the U.S. culture, and a lot of British actors have kind of like made the name for themselves more recently. But can you talk to me a little bit about your lens from how is marketing different, or is it different, in a place like England as it is can be compared to the United States?
Yeah, I think marketing, marketing is certainly is the way that, from your how you attract consumers to your products or services, right? I think in different cultures in different places part of the world, it's all about understanding consumer adoption. What does it take? What does it take for your average consumer or your desired consumer that's going to attract them to your product and services, and why should they choose you, right? So I think cultural relevance matters, right? Which is why in our world, why we focus solely on the multicultural audience here in the States, simply because how you talk to an African-American brother is going to be completely different than how you speak with someone that may be from middle of America, Wisconsin, or what have you, right? The nuances, the verbiage is different. In Detroit, this is what up, though, right? In New York, it's what's good. Down south is different verbiage, right? Different language as to how people approach it. So then now we take that a step further. You expand it at the global stage. It's insights wherever you might be, whether it's the States or Europe or India, Asia, what have you. It really starts at the fundamental level of understanding who are your consumers, How do you reach them? Where do you reach them? And what's going to make them tick to attract them to your product or services?
I think very well said. And obviously that insight has led you to form the company. And part of the reason why we're having a conversation today, you looked out for my podcast network, in a very intense way that we were very appreciative of, and still are very appreciative of. What inspired you to create Pod Digital Media?
For sure, great question. My end. So from the age of 16, again, moved to the States, 16, and being studying in Europe, I've always operated with a sense of curiosity, right? Curiosity in terms of, from a business perspective, what's next, right? I'm a trained media professional. Like, I didn't just wake up one day and say, I need to start doing podcast advertising. That's not how this came about, right? So I've been around since 2002. I've seen the evolution of search marketing. When Yahoo was called Overture, MSN was actually the leading search engine platform prior to Google even entering the space, right? So I've seen that evolution. I've been around for display advertising, how that digital world has completely evolved. I've been around for blogger advertising, which is now what we now call influencer, influencer advertising, right? When brands will actually identify specific blogs that has the right amount of traffic, that has the right amount of influence, and they'll go ahead and send them products. They'll do the reviews and they'll post it on the blogs, and then that essentially will drive traffic back to the to a company's website. I've also been around and operated with affiliate marketing, with the link swapping, where I put a link on your site, my link on your site, and you put your link on my site. And then that way there'll be some type of transaction. As you drive traffic to my site, people are buying products, you get compensated on the back end, which is essentially what podcasting is to some extent, because you get to talk about a product, we do a code, and then I retrieve that code on a website, then you get compensated, you get some level of commission for it, right? And then in various roles that I've had throughout the years, I operated as a director or vice president or what have you for social media marketing, right? So I've seen the evolution of Twitter. I purchased ads on Twitter back before it was X and LinkedIn, Snapchat, you name it. So I'm very familiar with the media and the digital world. Although I've always had a corporate role, but I've always operated with an entrepreneurial mindset. How can I impact this industry? This industry is coming up next. How can I how can I contribute to it? And how can I sort of really learn about it and bring value back to the clients or the brands I may have been working with at the time? So anyway, that being said, in 2017, I certainly saw the light, when I was doing my due diligence for one of our clients, Kale's daughter. The CEO's name is Lisa Price, and she was looking to do interviews because she was going through a rebranding process, because she had been acquired by L'Oreal, and her core customers felt like the product had been watered down. So L'Oreal decided to hire my agency at the time, Laundry Service, to actually go ahead and do sort of a rebranding campaign. And as part of that rebranding campaign, in my head, being curious, I'm like, okay, this is just the hiring us for a campaign. How can we retain L'Oreal's Kale's daughter for more of a 2-year or 1 year or a 2-year partnership versus more of an ad hoc spots and dots type campaigns that we were doing? I said, I need to bring innovation, right? So if you want to bring innovation, you have to be curious. You actually have to find out and figure out what are they not doing that you can bring to the table. So yeah, that's when I took it on my hands. And I started reaching out to all the podcast networks at the time, Gimlet, iHeart, Pandora, Podcast One. Started reaching out to all those different companies and saying, look, I'm looking to reach African-American women, Afro-Latinas that's interested in this hair care product, so that they can actually understand that Kale's daughter is, the product is still very authentic and still speak to their core consumers. And all these companies that I reached to at the time, and I just couldn't find 3 to 5 shows that we can actually go ahead and do any ad placements, or we can tap into to have Lisa be interviewed. And then the recommendations started coming back. Hey, there's this guy named such and such. It's a white guy. Hey, there's this guy named Joe Rogan. And then I'm sitting there, I'm like, yo, these people just don't get it. This doesn't make any sense. I don't know any African-American women or any Afro-Latinas. Actually, I don't know any women for that matter that wants to listen to a white guy or a guy to tell them to what to do with their hair in a podcast. So yeah, man, in that moment, that's when I, in my moment of frustration, but that's also when I had that light bulb moment of saying, hey, this doesn't currently exist. And being from New York, having access to a lot of influencers and a lot of talent and of course also having the background and working in media, having access to large agencies, I'm like, what's the worst that can happen, right? I can always get a meeting because I have the network, and I can always tap into different talent to sort of that's creating podcast content and help them monetize their, help them monetize their content. So that's sort of really what birthed the idea in December of 2017, and then in January of 2018, all these various articles started coming out. Podcast is the holy grail for advertisers. Podcasting numbers are going from $217 million to maybe $500 million, et cetera. And so that certainly grew my interest. And then that's when I went ahead in July of 2018 and launched Pod Digital Media.
Well,
long-winded answer, but that's what I have to give you the background here as
no.
to, as to how we got here.
No, nothing long-winded about it, brother. I mean, we got to get to the nitty-gritty and understand what the situation is. And as you were talking, I watch a lot of Shark Tank, consume a lot of that, and I can always tell, if a Black-owned product, if you will, or something that's ethnically engaged. And sometimes, hey, it's just not going to resonate with some of those investors on that panel. Sometimes I'm like,
exactly.
Yeah, you're going to have a hard time. So I appreciate you, finding and trying to create a lane, and you've created a lane, to connect podcasters who look like you and I, to the advertisers who want to work and work with us in those spaces. So the beginning is obviously hard, right? When you're just trying to create the lane and get that started. But now you're operating. And you're making it happen, and you have X amount of podcasts now and networks, whatever. What are your challenges now that you've actually seen some success? Like, what are the things that you and your team have to kind of get over the hump to continue that path of success that you're on?
I think currently, currently you build a business, and on our end where we completely bootstrapped it, right? We're not VC backed. We're not funded by a private equity firm or any, a large holding company, right? So we bootstrapped it. So at first, that's sort of really, you're building the business out of survival, right? You're trying to figure out, how do you keep the lights on? How do you attract advertisers? And how do you sort of even attract talent, people to work with you from a podcaster's perspective? How do you build credibility within the marketplace so people know you're a real player, right? So at first, those were certainly the challenges, lacking in resources, lacking in funding, but you still have to go ahead and make it happen. So we got over that hump. But I think now, it's more, the challenge is now is that the space is a bit oversaturated, right? In terms of the large companies actually had the right resources to do this prior to me go ahead and saying we are the first and the largest multicultural podcast network. So now they've all have entered the chat, right? They're all have entered the space. I think now the challenge is, it's the same challenge that just presents itself in a different way, right? How do we stay ahead of the curve? How do we attract top talent, right? Let's say it's a Shannon Sharp or Stephen A. Smith, all these sort of well-known folks, current athletes, former athletes that's now creating podcast content. How do we attract them without having sort of the pocketbook of those larger entities, and also not willing to sort of really give talent any sort of upfront payment, cash payment, sign-on bonus in order for them to come work with us, right? So therefore now we have to work 3 times harder, right, on the advertising front to attract bigger advertisers. But at the same time, in order for the advertisers to work with us, they also want to ensure that we also have top-tier talent that they want to work with, right? So it's a different sort of challenge in that regard, that one that we welcome, that's that keeps us engaged, that keeps us sort of we're not complacent, because we know that at any given time that someone can sort of attempt to sort of really get the talent that we might be interested in working with. And then the second piece to that I'll say is certainly we're working with talent, right? We're working with talent, we're working with creatives, we're working with creators who unfortunately sometimes may not have the knowledge, the media knowledge, to understand how this space works, right? They're thinking because they're a big name, they're going to enter the podcast space, and out of nowhere, they're going to get $100 million deals. And those things don't work. So that's a challenge in terms of, I don't like to say that word, where you have to sort of humble folks, right, through education and saying, look, you are who you say you are. However, this is a new medium. You actually still have to build an audience first. And then that's when advertisers will come into the fold. Certain folks that have entered the space now, if this was 2014 to 2017, they'll be really rich, because that's when brands were just really looking for content and they were paying top dollars for sponsorships. But marketers have gotten smarter, right? They're relying on data, they're relying on insights to ensure that, yes, you are a big name, but are you really moving the needle? Are you really helping me sell products in stores on my website? just because you're a big name doesn't necessarily mean that you have the influence that you think you have. So that just makes it a bit challenging, when we're having certain conversations with certain talent.
Gary, so you bring up a really interesting point there, right? So hey, let's keep it a buck. I'm not a big name. I'm Joe Schmo podcaster or whatever the case may be. So is your company now moving into that space where it does need to be, of that upper echelon of talent and the views and whatever influence? Because again, hey, it's money, right? And it doesn't matter that McDonald's has millions of dollars to spend. They want to spend that money appropriately and strategically. So it's not a matter of just because I started a podcast, McDonald's are going to come and sponsor me. So is that the lane that you all just kind of need to move in now? I think as, hey, times are shifting and your company is continuing to get notoriety.
Yeah, but yes, the answer is yes and no. And our there's strength in numbers, right? So we really believe in talent, especially, we have different shows that we work with. For example, there's a new show that's called Elevate Hers that recently started. I want to say they're in episode 13. But their work, those the two female hosts actually have a media background where they've worked in entertainment. They've hosted shows on other platforms,
right.
Whether it's BET, etc. So they really know how to create quality content, and they've gone ahead and do the work, and then really grow their numbers, and then the numbers and the type of guests, the quality of the content that have grown within the last few weeks tremendously, right? So I think what we're doing, it's not necessarily going after the big names. The big names are attractive. Big name also doesn't mean that they're going to be a workhorse to create content consistently that's going to be evergreen that advertisers can tap into at any given time, right? So on our end, yes, we're going to attract those big names because they might want to create a dope limited series that a brand can tap into. Sure. However, there's also tier 2, tier 3 talent that may not necessarily be household names, but when they create content, they also have real influence, and they have a real fan base. And based on the quality of the content that they're creating, that they're also going to attract audiences that advertisers can tap into. So the answer is yes, but also on our end, I think it's identifying talent that we can rely on, that also understand the business of creating content, the business, the media and advertising space, and understand what they need to create in order to keep attracting bigger advertisers. And that just makes our job much easier at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense, right? And I appreciate the honesty in that, because a lot of people would just try to sell me a ship, right? And I think it's important to kind of understand what's real. And if we're business people and you're serious about your business, and even in my network, we understand that we've had people come and go even on our network, right? Some people who are they're hobbyists, and some people who are taking it seriously, and then maybe do want to make it a profession in some capacity. So you have to figure out the way, in essence, to kind of marry those things together, especially in you're leveraging multi-million-dollar deals here. So I fully understand that. You're now moving into, I think, NIL and other kind of exciting spaces. The decision behind that, is that just kind of what the industry is trending towards, and you just kind of have to go there because that's what's kind of hot right now?
No, I mean, for us, it's all about innovation. Right. It's all about innovation and also what's next for us, right? Because then now, if I'm working with a podcaster that is also a current athlete or a former athlete, right, and that also has large influence on social media, that has a YouTube channel, very active YouTube channel, very engaging TikTok page, also something on Instagram, X, or Facebook or Threads, why would I not want to help them monetize those platforms as well, right? So that has allowed us to really move into the influencer space. But also those current athletes might also have access to their kids, might currently be high school athletes or college athletes, and they've also now built a strong following, and they're also looking for ways to monetize their content, especially, of course, with NIL sort of being legal now, where student athletes can actually monetize their image and likeness. On our end, if McDonald's is a tier 1 client of ours, and we have access to this sort of endless pool of talent, why would we not want to bring innovation and bring additional creators to McDonald's so we can help them move the needle so that they can keep selling their products? So on our end is, what value, in addition to audio, which will always be the point of entry, because we don't want to be the jack of all trades and the master of none. We are the master of audio. We understand podcasting. We understand the multicultural audiences. We also understand the buying power of that segment. But additionally, if that's the point of entry, what more can we bring to the table to sort of bring more value for our advertisers? How can we sort of really help them reach that hard to reach demo of Gen Zers now that has Chipotle, that has Chipotle, that has all these other options that were not available to you and I when we were growing up, right? So therefore, they have to make their dollars work 3 times harder. And there's also so many multiple touch points as to the different places where they can, multiple screens where they can reach that audience. How can we help them? How can we make that? How can we help them make that happen? How can we be the bridge the bridge to connect them authentically in all those various segments? So, which is why now it's not sort of what this is what the industry is doing for us. We always want to make sure that we're bringing value to our advertisers.
Extremely well said. We're talking with Gary Coichy here from Pod Digital Media, here on Dope Interviews. Let's take a quick break, y'all. We'll be right back. Are you ready to amplify your fantasy sports game? PrizePicks is here to make your basketball season even more exhilarating. Imagine transforming a modest $10 entry into a staggering $1,000. Whether you're rooting for basketball, baseball, or diving into the realm of esports, PrizePicks caters to all. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week. From lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. I grew up playing baseball, and I'm also enjoying the wave of excitement in the WNBA. You can be sure I'll be mixing and matching my picks from across leagues. Why wait? Get the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code CLNS to match your first deposit up to $100. Your selections can include projections like Jason Tatum for more than 10 rebounds, Luka Doncic for more than 29 points, Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 three-pointers, and even Breanna Stewart for more than 23 points. Make sure to use the promo code CLNS for your deposit match. Let's conquer the fantasy sports world together. Pick more, pick less using the code CLNS at PrizePicks, and stick around for more insightful discussions right here on Dope Interviews. And we're back here on Dope Interviews here with the great Gary Coichy here from Pod Digital Media. So Gary's been talking to us a lot about the podcast industry, his role in it thus far. And Gary, all experiences are learning experiences. So, what would you say has been the most surprising thing that you learned in the years being in this industry, working with the various level of talent and understanding that it is ever evolving?
That's a great question, man. You learn a lot. You learn a lot again when you're dealing with various. We're dealing with various corporations. It's various. The way McDonald's conduct business is very different than the way Amex does business, or very different the way Procter and Gamble does business, right? And you also learn. You're dealing with corporations. With some corporations that have a lot of red tapes.
Yeah.
So it's really learning to maneuver. It's learning to sort of position or offering in a way that's attractive to all of those, all of the different types of advertisers, whether those are CPG brands, B2B brands, or big pharma or financial services, etc. It's really learning the best way to sort of keep evolving and keep positioning the company, especially now too, as more competitors have entered the space, to create similar offering to what we currently have. Right. So I think it's a revolving door that will always keep happening. Competitors will enter the space, advertisers, people are switching roles, and finding ways to ensure that your product doesn't remain stale. And then that you can actually find ways to, again, going back to the word that I mentioned earlier, continue to bring value so that advertisers can say, look, yes, we like to work with those big brand names, household names. However, we know that the audiences that and the type of talent that Pod Digital Media work with brings a lot of value, and we're able to reach that audience at scale. We have to keep working with those guys.
Two-part question for you here, Gary. Who's the whale from a podcasting standpoint and from a brand standpoint? It's like, hey, I can't wait to work with this person on the podcasting side and on the brand side. We're speaking this into existence.
No, a manifestation for sure, without a doubt. On the brand side, man, I'm very surprised that we haven't worked with. It's Verizon.
Okay.
We've worked with AT&T. We've worked with one another telco company I can't think of right now. But surprisingly, we haven't worked with Verizon, and offering is strong enough in terms of, we have, they're huge sponsors in the NFL. We have a lot of NFL podcasters that we work with. They also have a lot of value brands that they have, invisible brands that sort of really cheap to a household that may not make over 100,000. Mm-hmm. So, we have sort of the audiences and the shows that make sense. However, we just haven't been able to crack that nut. So I'm speaking into existence end of 2024, 2025. Pod Digital Media will be working with Verizon.
Let's go.
That's certainly the well. And on the podcast, and to be quite honest with you, man, there's not necessarily a name per se. You know, if you look at interviews I've done, I want to say back in 2014, 2015, I would say Oprah, right? But you know, it's you know, those are the names that I used to float in interviews. But to be honest, there's not necessarily one name, simply because we've seen big names come into the space and fail terribly, just because, you know, they just want to talk about themselves and they don't know necessarily how to keep the audience engaged,
Yeah.
and they also lack consistency. So their podcast and the content that they're creating fails terribly. We've seen actors, musicians, politicians, all of them come and fail terribly. I think on our end, we want to keep enhancing the job we're doing right now, and the best way to keep identifying great talent, whether it's a household name or non-household name, that's going to create quality content that we can tap into.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I think, and you're at the stage here now where you don't necessarily need to be wish listing, and that's a great place to be, right?
For
I mean,
sure.
it really is. So, not a lot of businesses, especially Black-owned businesses, can get to that point. So, your team has been amazing. Speaking of, you know, I mean, you're the person I deal with for the most part, right? But
Right.
you can't possibly be running this all by yourself. Shout out the rest of some of your teammates and some maybe even people who helped you bring this vision into life.
Oh, no, absolutely, man. Shout out to Ferdinand Lewis. He's on the operations team. Alex Brias, who is the gentleman that leads our operation efforts. We have Ann Fenellis, operations. We have Charisma Penn, that also work on the operations team. We have Stacy Smith. We have Latasha Young. And we just hired 2 new folks. I can't think of their names right now, but no, man, we have a pretty robust team that really helps us. You know, I'm certainly the face, you know, in terms of from interviews, you know, but that's certainly a goal of ours, to sort of really elevate some of our other team members too, so that everyone, I'm not always the person in the first line of defense, but we certainly have a team behind me that's always supporting me, that ensures that, you know, we can that this business is running smoothly and properly.
And it's a high class business. Let me tell you, if you haven't followed Positive Media on social media, or Gary on social media, they be in some places, man, and it's amazing. I think for me, you know, I mean, to see and keeping it a buck, to see another Black man doing the damn thing. You know, you're in Cannes, you know, you're overseas over here. You're at Art Basel here in the South Florida area where I'm at as well too. Like, it's just it's inspiring, right? And I think in a lot of ways in our culture, there can be that jealousy that's there. But when I tell you, I look and I see you winning, and I'm like, well, hell yeah, bro! like do that, and it's amazing to watch, brother. So keep doing that, man, because I think you are inspiring those, even if that's not what your intent is. That's absolutely happening on the back end, brother. I really do appreciate you for that.
No, I appreciate you saying that, and I think, you know, I think now I'm operating with purpose, and my goal is to certainly keep operating with the right intentions, and to make the right impact within my community, right? So therefore, which is one of the reasons why, you know, I go back to a lot of high school, colleges, even, you know, even just this interview, right? My goal is to create more interviews to really share my story, right? To let everyone know, hey, I'm this kid that, you know, that started out in Haiti, that didn't speak English until he's 18. I still have an accent until this day, but consistency and hard work and curiosity have led me to where I'm currently at right now. I promise you, I did nothing special, but besides out making sure that I'm staying curious, I'm doing my due diligence, and I keep learning, right? And I operate with flexible mindset, so I can always receive information to understand how I'm showing up and how I'm being received. So yeah, the goal is certainly to keep inspiring, for sure, to ensure that more guys that look like me can be in all those spaces, so that, you know, at the end of the day, I can always pass the baton. It's all 4 of us at the table, or building our own table, actually, so then that more of us can actually can be enjoying a nice meal together.
Yeah, that part right there. A couple last ones here, Gary. Fun fact that people don't know about you. What's something that people don't know? Something you might not have already shared on other interviews. I need an exclusive here on Dope Interviews.
I got you, man. I'm a social loner. I give so much energy out on a daily basis, right? Whether that's the team internally that I'm managing, whether that's to clients, whether that's to talent, or whether that's just to, you know, everyday folks that I interact with. I give so much energy. I'm an extrovert, right? So I give a lot of energy. However, once I come home, and then I'm in my own personal space, I don't want to be bothered. So that's certainly I've never said this on any interview. This is my
Right.
first time saying this publicly, actually. So yeah, that's a fact. I'm a social, as much of an extrovert that I am, I actually do enjoy my alone time.
I hear that, and I share that. I share that. I think some of my jobs, if you will, require me to be more extroverted and more personable, but I'm very reserved, and
Right.
it's a conversation that a friend of mine told my wife one time, because she's from the South per se, and they're like, well, she's nice on purpose, you know what I mean? She'd rather not really even have the interaction. So when she's being nice, it's on purpose, to try to get the job done. So last one, kind of a fun one. So I was watching something else, and I heard, you might be a Boomerang fan, and that is the Boomerang, the Eddie Murphy movie, Boomerang.
Yes,
Talk
yes,
to me a little
yes.
bit about why that one that hits with you. And Gary, we share that. That's one of my favorite Eddie Murphy movies, and one of my favorite movies, period, of all time.
Man, that's certainly one of my top fives for sure. So the kick is this. I didn't have any older brothers or any older cousins, right? Again, that's part of the purpose mission, the current mission that I'm on right now, because you can't be what you can't see, you can't be what you can't hear, right? Which is the power of audio, and it's the power of having folks like myself, even yourself too, in certain spaces, or even being able to have platforms that we can offer to, to our communities, so we can actually share our stories, right? So to Boomerang specifically, I've always been, even at a young age, I've always wanted to be in marketing, but I didn't really know what marketing was, right? I used to hear all those commercials, funny commercials, serious commercials, same thing on TV and also on the radio. And I'm like, who's responsible for this? Like, why am I the one hearing this message right now, right? That curiosity led me to saying, I want to be a marketer, right? And then now you're watching Boomerang, and then me not having any older brother, any other cousin, I can say as mentors, right? I sort of really look at this TV character as someone that I want to be. I'm like, this guy is cool, this guy is smart, and this guy also have sort of the charisma and the swag to sort of really, really attract the ladies. I want to be Marcus Graham, right? And to be honest with you, man, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, I've went and led my career. Everything I've done, I've certainly, as high, I worked for a beauty brand. One of the companies I worked for, I was the director of marketing, and and I sort of really came up with some of those marketing ideas, and I really felt like I was Marcus Graham. I'm like, I've reached the level that I've wanted to reach to be Marcus
Hell
Graham.
yeah.
So it's certainly a movie. I try to watch it at least once every 2 months, just because I'm still inspired by it. Just because I just remember the feeling when I first watched it, how it inspired me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I have to be Marcus Graham. And I even wrote a book where the book is, that's also a fun fact. A book that's called Bachelors of New York City, where it's not just one Marcus Graham. All the characters in the book, it's four different versions of Marcus that you get in the book. One that the gentleman that's in finance, entrepreneur, marketer, and an attorney. In the movie, in Boomerang, Marcus was the only cool one. His two friends, Martin Lawrence, and the other gentleman were not as cool as him. Right. So he was sort of really like the de facto leader of the crew. But in the book that I wrote, you have 4 Marcus Grahams, which makes it very, it's called Bachelors of New York City. It's on Amazon, which makes it very sort of a fun read. But that was inspired by the movie Boomerang. So I became a marketer because of Boomerang, and also went and wrote a book because of it as well.
That's hella dope. Hella dope. Favorite scene?
Favorite scene is he shows up to the office. That's, I want to say, within 3 minutes of the movie. He shows up to his office, and his phone is ringing, and his secretary is like, "Hey, Marcus, the what's it called? The casting call is happening," and he spins his chair where he goes, and he looks in the lobby, and then he comes back, and he goes, "Hold all my calls for the rest of the day. I need to go to this casting call." And I'm not embarrassed to say it. I actually did it at one of my jobs when I worked at
Lex on
Lacoste.
G.
Yeah. So yeah, what's yours? What's your favorite scene?
I gotta say, honestly, I think it's the stuff where like the boys are just kind of hanging out. So like it's the workout scene, you know what I mean? And it's just like,
yeah.
I mean, it's probably not appropriate for the show, but you know what I mean? Like they're talking passionate, about how they're trying to get with ladies or whatever, and just like the bromance that's within that. that stuff resonates with me kind of throughout. You know who would have a really dope podcast? Strong J.
Yeah, I agree. Right.
Strong J or Chris Rock from the mailroom. He would be telling some stories, right?
No, actually, I mean, that movie has so many characters and there's so many top tier talent. Like you think of a guy like Chris Rock, he was playing, he had a limited scene, but his scene was so impactful, right? Because he worked in the mailroom. So you think about the level of talent that was in that movie, man. You know, you have Halle Berry, what's her name that played
Layla Rashawn, Robin Givens,
right? You had Robin Givens. So it's incredible, man. It's certainly one of my top favorite movies for sure.
Absolutely. Well, Gary, that's a great place to wrap, and it gives us some opportunity for some bandwidth to maybe have another conversation down the line as Pod Digital Media continues to grow and expand. Before we let you go, just, where can the people reach you to reach the company, and kind of what's next for PDM?
No, absolutely. You can reach us on Instagram, Pod Media. That's our Instagram page. But myself personally, you can also reach us Pod Digital Media on LinkedIn. And my name, Gary Coichy, GaryCoichy. You can certainly find me. You can certainly find me on LinkedIn. That's certainly the best way to connect with me. I mean, as far as what's next, man, it's again, we want to keep innovate. We're very excited about the experiential arm of the business that we currently have. Right, we're creating culture. We're creating live activations around key cultural moments and events like Art Basel, Super Bowl, All-Star, F1, Fashion Week, HBCU homecomings, Hispanic Heritage Month, Black History Month. So we want to keep, be very much more consistent in terms of taking podcasters. How do we make audio sexy? Well, it's by creating live activations around it, having live podcast conversations that's getting recorded, again, and then bringing in-person engagement and bringing custom episodes and series for advertisers, right? And then, of course, the influencer arm of the business that we have, we're very excited about it. We're getting ready to make an announcement. We just signed one of the largest WNBA agency in the country. They have about 15% of all active WNBA players.
Right.
So women in sports, we're very excited about that segment. So all things that's coming out of the pipeline. And again, those are all things that we're doing in order to bring more value to advertisers.
All right. Well, I'm going to need some of those WNBA contacts, come on the Baseline NBA podcast. Shameless plug here on Dope Interviews. But that is a great place again to wrap. He is a great Gary Coichy. Make sure you can follow him at Pod Media. I'm Warren Shaw. Hit me up at Shaw Sports NBA or at Dope_interview. And as always, you know what it is. It's been another Dope Interviews, y'all. And we're out.
Together we stand, divided we never. The vision is one, striving for the better. Working as a team, working toward a dream. It's not even work when the team is the dream. On a united front, we got our own back. A band of brothers to counteract any attack. One heart in fact, forget what the blood say. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA. So let's do it for the love, give to the max. Listen to opinion, but react to facts. And remember that together with a but separate, just pieces of it. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA. Dope is what flows in this fam's DNA.
Family represent like a tree with names on it. We're free, no chains on it. Relieved, the pain's gone, I can see. We come together like questions on the quiz. Mojo Flow and Viz, man, you know what it is. And if ignorance is bliss, you're gonna hate this lesson. Organized intellect like a tropical depression. My symbol is the cross, a mic and ghost peppers. Cause I'm just a black sheep growing up to be a shepherd. Moonlighting as a weapon to protect the children. Every brother is a father, dynasties we're building. Max, J and K, Bay, and Isaiah, next level of the family foundation. Understand me?